Madume motswana wetso ke a go amogela mo thulaganyo ya letsatsi la gompieno ya The Eye. Ke bidiwa o mphile sehurutsi. Motswana wetso o ta gakologelwa gore mo ngwageng o fetileng kgwedi ya Sedimonthole kgotla-kgolo ya ikuelo e ne a laola gore lefatshe la Botswana le tshwanetse la tlotla la bo la sireletsa ditshwanelo tsa batho ba ba ratanang ka bong jo bongwe fela. Go tsamalana le tshwetso ya ga motlotlegi Tautona ya go tsamaisa lefatshe leo le le tlotlang tsamaiso ya molao e ne a re mo tshokologong ya letsatsi la gompieno motlotlegi Tautona a bo a laleditse bangwe ba ba tswang ko lekgotleng le la LEGABIBO go ta go ba amogela le go ba tlhomamisetsa maikaelelo a puso ya Botswana go tlotla tshwetso ya kgotla ya ikuelo. Motswana wetso a re tswelele jaanong mo thulaganyong ya gapegileng gompieno ya The Eye re go tisetsa bokopano jo jaaka motlotlegi Tautona jaaka ha ne a kopane le baemedi ba lekgotla le la LEGABIBO.
Unprecedented and historic. My meeting today with members of the community of lesbians, gays, and bisexuals of Botswana, commonly known as LEGABIBO, comes against the background of a watershed event of the handing down of the Court of Appeal judgment of the 29th of November 2021, which effectively drew to finality the long-standing and contentious legal matter challenging the criminalization of same-sex sexual conduct. It is common cause that the Court of Appeal confirmed an earlier High Court judgment that had declared the provisions of Section 164A and 164C of the Penal Code to be unconstitutional and therefore struck them down. As a democracy, Botswana is not immune to judicial currents of thought that advance the expansion of a culture of human rights for all in both policy and the precepts of law, and is thus always open to allowing any contested issue of human and legal rights to be processed to the fullest extent by our court system. This is part of the essence of adhering to the rule of law and upholding good governance and democracy as guiding principles of our nation. In this regard, I wish to reiterate a vital point expressed in the statement issued by the Attorney General, Advocate Abraham M. Tsabe, on the 30th of November 2021, following the delivery of the Court of Appeal judgment. Without equivocation, the Attorney General stated thus: the judiciary, and I quote, "The judiciary is established as an independent arm of the state with the constitutional responsibility of interpreting our laws. The judiciary has dutifully carried out its mandate under the Constitution, and it follows that the decision to strike down sections 164A and 164C of the Penal Code be respected and implemented accordingly. It is only through compliance with court decisions that democracy and the rule of law in this country can continue to flourish," close quote. The government declares its commitment to ensure that the Penal Code sections declared ultra-virus the Constitution are repealed. The Office of the Attorney General and the National Assembly are thereby expected to follow through with the due process for this to happen in our statutes. Furthermore, the members of the LEGABIBO community can now derive comfort in the expectation of being fully included to benefit in all government services that they had hitherto been unable to access on account of the exclusions made in the provisions of the then existing laws. Nonetheless, it will take all of Botswana and all of Botswana society to have a mindset change in embracing some of these socio-cultural changes. It is my pleasure as the head of state to have this opportunity of interacting with you in the enjoyment of our democratic dispensation to freely share ideas going forward. And please, know for the record, you are fully embraced. Fear not. My job is to protect you and everybody else.
Let me take this opportunity to fully express my gratitude for His Excellency's acceptance in meeting with us. We are quite thankful, and thank you very much for welcoming us here this afternoon. Your Excellency, the organization would like to thank you for emphasizing the importance of recognizing the rights of the LGBTIQ communities in Botswana. And this is very in line with our Beyond the Rainbow strategic intent that denotes that LGBTIQ persons have the same rights as every other citizen and human beings in our country. Your Excellency, we do applaud you for being the first president to openly and freely highlight that people in the same-sex relations in our country do exist, and that there are those who are violated and have suffered silence for fear of being decriminalized, and hence the importance to have their rights protected. Your Excellency, we would like to highlight that this is a step in the right direction, and this type of leadership does indeed align with Your Excellency's reset agenda for transformation in light of the health and economic setbacks by the COVID-19 pandemic. Your open dialogue and protection of the LGBTI rights is well in line also with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that denotes recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family in the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. LEGABIBO does associate itself fully with His Excellency's vision to improve service delivery and Botswana's economic standing. The organization does appreciate that as we regroup towards becoming a high-income country, there is a lot that needs to be done. Amongst these is recognition of the impact of civil society organizations and their ability to help government reach people that they may not be able to reach. Your Excellency, allow me to give you an overview of who we are as an organization and your honorable team members. We currently have 5 drop-in centers across the country, and in these drop-in centers we service about 6,555 LGBTIQ persons that access our health services across the country. We are currently also working on a deep stake projection of about 10.5 to 11% of the total number of LGBTIQ community members across the country. LEGABIBO is a non-governmental organization registered with the Register of Societies, and our vision is to be an all-inclusive political, social, and economic environment where human rights are core to the development of our society, and we aim to strengthen our communities and movements and engage with strategic partners like yourselves, the public, to promote inclusive human rights and development in our societies. Your Excellency, our work is in 3 areas: to defend, to promote, and to protect. You may be interested in knowing that we fully associate as well with corporate governance. We work with partners and funders across the world. We have an executive board and a management team that ensures that there is nothing that falls through the cracks. Your Excellency, our organizational operating model is in 3 areas, or it has 3 pillars: legal and advocacy services, socio-economic development services, health and wellness programs. This model is meant to ensure that the organization is prepared for the converged human rights ecosystem. It puts more emphasis on across-the-board research, development, and innovation that ensures that our work is well-informed. Your Excellency, LEGABIBO has made strides since our establishment, and these include, as you have mentioned, the win of the decriminalization appeal case in November 2021. We have partnered with government departments in advancing access to services for the LGBTIQ communities, including partnership with Ministry of Health and Wellness, especially on HIV/AIDS prevention and monitoring across the country, partnership with DHMTs on COVID-19 and health services response, establishments of support groups for LGBTIQ persons across the country that has helped the organization to monitor the needs of the LGBTIQ communities, dialogues with Dikhosi and religious leaders in and across the country. We are working closely with other local organizations to help us advance this advocacy, including FHI 360, USAID, PEPFAR, Bonella, etc. Your Excellency, our efforts are in alignment with the country's Vision 2036 agenda of human and social development, peace and security. This is also enshrined in our Beyond the Rainbow strategy that is founded on our 4 pillars of strengthening communities and movements, changing systems and services, legal and policy reform. Your Excellency, just to touch a little bit on the decriminalization judgment. This case afforded Botswana a momentous day in history indeed, a victorious win in ascertaining liberty, privacy, and dignity of the LGBTI persons in Botswana, and setting a very strong example in Africa as a whole, and we would like to applaud you for this as well. The judgment has set precedents for the world at large. Moreover, a new dawn for better education and awareness about the LGBTIQ issues. We anticipate that more engagements with various arms of government will also set a trajectory towards a more inclusive and diverse nation. Your Excellency, the court did note that the penal code provisions discriminated against LGBTI persons on the basis of sexual orientation, and this falls within prohibited ground of discrimination of sex. This finding is important, Your Excellency, since most constitutions do not explicitly prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The organization did provide evidence to the court on how laws criminalizing consensual same-sex relationships perpetuate and increase stigma and discrimination, reinforcing already existing societal prejudice and profoundly impairing LGBTI persons' fundamental dignity. The evidence showed that criminalization of same-sex sexual relations isolates LGBTI persons from essential health services, access to care, thereby jeopardizing national HIV prevention efforts and hindering public health that LGBTI persons in Botswana experience higher levels of violence than the general population. Your Excellency, the decriminalization of Section 164 and 65 left out Section 167 that prescribes both public and private gross indecency. In this view, Your Excellency, what regulatory joy and solace are derived from the law when it prescribes and criminalizes such conduct of 2 consenting adults expressing and professing love to each other within their secluded sphere, bedroom, confines, and or precinct. It is therefore that we need to realize and note that human conduct and expression, which has a tendency and effect on impairing and infringing upon constitutionally ordained, promised, and entrenched fundamental human rights, is important for us to look at very, very seriously. The Court of Appeal excluded, Your Excellency, a decision on Section 167 because it was not raised by the applicant. Only LEGABIBO amicus raised the issue. As expected, the community, especially lesbian women in Botswana and abroad, raised an alarm or concern on the exclusion of this section and its effect on queer women. So naturally, it would be prudent to act on this as soon as possible so as to ensure that Section 167 is addressed fully. For government, Your Excellency, we are requesting that we continue to help LEGABIBO to create and build education and awareness on LGBTIQ issues, to avail speaking opportunities with local authorities so we can educate and teach on matters that affect the LGBTIQ communities. Your Excellency, deeply embedded homophobic and transphobic attitudes, often combined with a lack of adequate legal protection against discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity, expose many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people of all ages across all regions of the country to violations of their human rights. We request for assistance in opening doors to work with local security forces and the police to increase awareness, raising, and capacities to deal with LGBTI-phobic hate crime. This will assist us in ensuring efficient support for victims and improved mechanisms for reporting LGBT-phobic hate crime. We request for enhanced monitoring and reliable data collection on LGBT-phobic hate crimes. we request to build comprehensive prevention policies to combat and avoid LGBT-phobic hate crime. We also request for sustainable dialogue and cooperation with public and private authorities. Your Excellency, civil society organizations play a vital role in assisting to ensure that human rights issues are addressed adequately and in reporting and monitoring them. To ensure these issues are successfully dealt with, the above-mentioned measures should be efficiently implemented. Public authorities, and in particular, law enforcement authorities, need to work very closely with ourselves in order for us to achieve a better outcome. We also, Your Excellency, note that there's a lot of psychosocial bullying of the LGBTIQ communities on the streets, private homes, and workplaces and schools. It is therefore important to recognize the mental needs of the LGBTIQ community. Your Excellency, following a report by one of our partner organizations on the relationship between LGBT inclusion and economic development, LGBT people face disproportionate rates of physical, psychological, and structural violence, which tend to restrict their ability to work because of physical injuries and psychological trauma. LGBT people face work discrimination that results in them being unemployed or underemployed, and thus affecting their full ability to contribute to the development of the country. We strongly recommend, Your Excellency, that Botswana should ensure that developmental areas incorporate concerns about LGBT people, and indeed, research does demonstrate that there are links between LGBT people's lives and their potential economic contributions at the national level, hence making LGBT inclusion relevant for development programs. Your Excellency, in terms of democracy and LGBT participation, LEGABIBO alerts His Excellency that as we continue our work, we have established that LGBT communities have been a part of the democratic process for a long time, and they have assisted to advance the democratic voting progress. We would like to encourage His Excellency and your team to challenge our politicians on finding ways and strategies that could help ensure that democracy facilitates an opportunity for our political parties to become a safe space for the LGBT communities to express themselves. This is important because LGBTIQ community is a part of the majority voting numbers. In terms of diversity and inclusion as part of the national policy, as the country presses towards being a high-income country, Your Excellency, we urge you to help us in pushing the diversity and inclusion to become a part of the national agenda at both policy and implementation levels for both the public, parastatal, and private sector, safeguarding freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly for all LGBTI people. Your Excellency, another major issue of support is on transgender issues to ensure transgender people are treated with dignity and respect. Our work shows dissatisfaction with the gender recognition process in Botswana. There is no specific law that allows transgender persons in Botswana to change their gender marker in their identity documents or passport. However, there are provisions in the National Registration Act 26 of 1986 that could be used for transgender persons to change the sex description in their identity documents. Your Excellency, we also plead for access to health services for transgender people. That is also pivotal. Botswana healthcare system needs to be more open to the transgender community to access medical care for their transition. This recognition will ensure that trans-identifying persons can fully and meaningfully participate in civil, political, and economic life in Botswana. Your Excellency, though we get funding from other general funders, there is a need for government to assist civil society organizations like ourselves to keep our lights on. And we believe this is in total alignment to your commitment to making the Millennium Development Goals a reality in Botswana. And what a better way to ensure this by supporting civil society efforts, especially human capital and capacity building. Your Excellency, your commitment to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adds to the country's Vision 2036 that should be met with much support, especially from organizations like LEGABIBO. It is therefore with this in mind that as we push towards the realization of 2030, government should make some financial commitment to help boost the work of organizations like LEGABIBO. Your Excellency, the presence of my board members allow me to alert you that we have been struggling to keep the work of the organization going because of inadequate funding, and your support will be highly appreciated as it will ensure that we reach one more Motswana in the nosebleed. Your Excellency, LEGABIBO has not benefited from the Global Fund, and as the oldest LGBTIQ movement in the country, we believe that the fund would greatly benefit more people that we serve. We therefore request Your Excellency to help us in attaining funding from the Global Fund that is administered by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Your Excellency, in terms of the constitutional review process, we also applaud you for the appointment of the Constitutional Review Committee. However, LEGABIBO is of the view that LGBTIQ representation is lacking in the committee, particularly because it is pivotal following the 11th November 2021 United Nations Human Rights Committee findings on Botswana, and also in lieu to your vision for the country, Your Excellency. As Botswana has been called to adopt a comprehensive legislation to prohibit any form of discrimination, including sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, and HIV status, we believe that representation into the constitutional review for the LGBT community is very pivotal in setting the right tone for transformational leadership. Your Excellency, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate you as well for setting up the Transformation Committee that is diverse and full of people with experience. We are aware that the road to transformation is one that must have unprecedented scale, speed, and complexity of change. It is with this in mind that as we gear towards this transformational process, we would love to see more younger people in the Transformation Committee that you set up, Your Excellency. I am also hoping that following the passing of the committee's stalwart leader, Remo Sebabule, another young person will be appointed at the helm of this very important committee. Your Excellency, as I finish my notes, let me thank you once again. LEGABIBO does recognize the considerable progress that Botswana has made in scaling up human rights programs. I believe that the setup of the National Steering Committee now recognizes that there is great work ahead of them in effectively coordinating the implementation and monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals, reducing inequality and strengthening diversity and inclusion, guaranteeing peace, justice, and strong institutions even among civil societies. Your Excellency, on behalf of the LGBTIQ communities, the board, and the Secretariat, with these few words, let me thank you again for affording us the opportunity to come and say hello. Thank you.
Hello back to you. You know, we're living in a pretty conservative society, and any serious politician does not risk the kind of controversy at election time, except to make the promise we will enhance inclusion. And so much as the government representatives defended the position of government, it was never with the intention of denying any segment of society their human rights. It was ready to bring to finality. This, for me, as president, is very much like the death penalty. There are very many arguments, both sides. I will apply the law as is. The constitutional review, I hope, would get to elicit from Botswana what their view is, and I will follow suit. In this case, it was a litigation because we respect the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary. Everybody flexed it, knowing fully well that at the end of the day, the rules are rules. Once it is handed down, we all align. I can assure you, this government is completely aligned. So the point you raised about the exclusion of the other provisions Section 167.
Yeah.
I take due note of, and we will engage to provide a response. But we will never be lost to the mission. There's a particular mission that we want to achieve. So the little remnants of whatever might be left should not disturb the attainment of your full enjoyment of full the rights that everybody else has. That's our declaration. Sure, there are others who are going to frown on us and say, but we will not shy away from standing by a decision of our appeals court, which we respect very strongly. And we demand and expect everybody to respect our courts as we do. So thank you very much for popping in and saying hello. I too will find time in my schedule to pop in, hopefully after COVID, because I do like tea or coffee. I guess you might offer me some when I visit.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll come and say hello one day. Because civil society is extremely important in democracy too. It is our conscience barometer. And it exists for that. And every government that's serious must take pride in having a strong civil society. So well done, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
ne re go tsholetse go le kalo motswana wa etsho mo thulaganyong ya gompieno e hapegileng ya the eye eo mo go yone motlotlegi tautona Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi a neng a amogela baemedi ba lekgotla la LEGABIBO go ta go ba amogela jalo le go ba nela ditlhomamiso ya gore lehatshe la Botswana le tla tlotla tshwetso ya kgotla ya ikuelo e tswereng ka ngwana a tsele ngwa go hitileng ke a leboga motswana wetsho a re bo re kopana gape mo nakong e tlang sala sentle.